I'm going to ask a question, and I promise I won't ask a follow up because I know I need to save it for another show. A and B, I don't want to put you in a bad spot. So here's the one question when I promise no follow up. Did you know that Vince Russo was calling Panda Energy, going around your dad for creative? Did you know he was at least making calls to Panda?
And see, here's where, when I was hearing you read Dave's several
Recap.
paragraphs, I went into, and I'm not kidding around, man, he's selling subscription because he's so off the mark that he's talking about Russo, JArrett funding the company and Russo and him and this big battle. And at the very end of the day, as a part of the due diligence, and my dad wasn't really a big fan of this, like they don't need to get it. I'm like, no, hey man, they're going to cut this bill. Instead of, it's the shoe on the other foot or the perspective. Chris Sobel, let me think. I mean, Chris Sobel was calling Goldilocks. Chris Sobel was calling talent. Chris Sobel was calling Vince Russo. And they're all giving their opinion. So you can say Vince was talking to Panda behind everyone's back. It wasn't behind my back. I was aware that Sobel, I mean, and again, that was his job. He was so rough around the edges, and me and him had some knockdown dragouts because he didn't understand the business. Ron Harris said, I've never seen your face get so red so quick.
Give me an example. Give me an example of something that, and again, we're not picking on Chris.
I know I'm not, but I'll be very direct about this because some people have diplomacy and some people don't. Chris Sobel, very arrogant, zero diplomacy, but Bob Carter put him in that position, and I believe Bob did it for a reason, and kudos to him. He's writing the check. But Sobel had the mindset that talent was just like, like a cattle car. The cows pull up, we're going to lead them to slaughter. Some are going to make T-bones, some are going to make filet mignons, and some of them are going to make crappy ground beef. It doesn't matter. We're going to get a new round. Zero value on guys that were busting their ass. Now, did that hit a soft spot for me because I'm a talent? Probably, but it's taken me 20 years to learn that. But Chris was rough around the edges and, again, very little diplomacy. And I would listen and I would listen and I would bite my tongue and I'd bite my tongue. But there were several times that it came like, dude, you can tell me about finance, you can tell me about legal, and you can tell me about management. Don't talk to me and don't talk down about talent because you just don't know what you're talking about. Because without talent, you don't have a show. And Janice Carter got that very first conversation, literally like, okay, I see that. I'm like, if you boil it, and I had these conversations, when you boil it right down to it, yes, Vince McMahon took everything national, and he, at this point, as we know, that took his company public. But Hulkamania was not a marketing campaign. Hulkamania was an individual with a marketing campaign built around it, just like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mr. McMahon was a storyline of two human beings that you could relate to, but they're really walking, talking. It's not just some marketing. And again, they came from the energy business, and that's how they counted up their profits by how much energy they can produce at a certain amount of cost. Just completely do different things. But, when you drill it right down to it, my stage of their career, understanding IP is not the easiest thing to do for folks who hadn't been around it very long. And that's where me and Sobel had our head butting, that creating IP is the value. The wrestling industry is only worth what your IP is. Wrestling rings and all this BS, and that candidly, a TV contract can go away just as quick as you got it. If you don't have, just overnight. As we get into 2013, we'll be able to talk about that. But IP is IP, and that's the value of an industry, the wrestling industry.
So let's try to put a bow on this episode. What do you think is the biggest misconception about your deal with Panda?
Ooh, misconceptions. Well, and this in later years is that they just poured silly, funny money in it, and they never did. They watched every dime. They were shrewd and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but because you probably want to stay on the sell.
Well, no, but let's mention that too, because I do think a lot of people assume differently. When this big quote unquote sale happens, I'm sure they wrote you a big old check too, right, Jeff?
Bob didn't, he literally didn't pay a penny. Well, I mean, there's a few bits and pieces, but he agreed to fund it moving forward.
But he did not write the JArrett family a check.
Hell no. He took yes. So you'll know, and I think, Conrad, we somewhat covered this, but Richard, we had set it up that Jeff had a loan to the company, JArrett had a loan to the company, and Helsat had a loan to the company. You know, the blue sky was, once we get it back making money, all that money's paid back. I was last in line. My dad was second to last in line, and Richard was first in line. But Bob Carter came in and converted all that to equity. So great businessman, and watched every penny. And if you look at the trajectory of the company, they were that way until December of 2009.
So at what point, well, let me back up. What's your biggest regret in selling to Panda? Is there one? A big regret?
No, because the timing was right. Look, I could have burnt the hand better than two in the bush. You know, could I have gone and take the face-to-face with the King family? Look, Don King is a boxing promoter and very colorful one. The real estate folks around Middle Tennessee, tried to go find other options. I don't have any regret. I'm very, and let's be right up front with this. I probably should have said at the very top, I am incredibly grateful to the entire Carter family, Bob, Janice, Dixie, Todd, for everything they did for me personally and professionally. So regrets selling to them? None. What a ride it was. We'll cover it in later episodes, and covered it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but zero regrets.
One more question from Conrad from Huntsville.
Okay.
At what point, if ever, I'm sure I shouldn't say if ever, when was it apparent to you that, oh, wow, okay, Panda really does have 51%? I'm sure at first, listen, I understand it's like Marcus Lemonis on The Prophet. Hey, if I'm writing you this check, I'm 100% in charge. I get that type of deal. But I'm just wondering, you're going to continue to keep doing what you've been doing, but then there will be at some point a little roadblock and it says Panda Energy on it. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I stand corrected. We're not doing that. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, shit, they really are running things now. What was the first moment of that?
So I'm going to go under the assumption that you're thinking I'm well aware that he who writes the checks writes the rules.
Yeah, that, but you also kind of think, well, they're going to leave the wrestling up to me, like the content's up,
not the financing.
Yeah,
not the amount of dollars. And we stayed with a collective. We brought Dean Broadhead as the CFO on. So the deal that me and Janice, or let me say this, the deal that Janice articulated to me, Jeff, you run the wrestling, and we'll run the financing and the accounting and all that. That stayed. The train stayed on the tracks until 2010, 2009. And when I saw and we'll get into it, the power play, the double cross, all the BS went down. When I saw that manipulation go down, and
it was like an aha moment.
Oh, it was, wow. How quickly the tide turns when the rubber meets the road. And look, how much water had been under the bridge. And look, it goes without saying, 07, 08, 09, we were profitable. And I thought that was I thought we were in alignment. But in 2010, I found out the alignment for me was to make money. It wasn't so much to make money with the relationship anymore.